So doing the rebuild on a PJ Ford Ranger 3-litre turbo diesel engine. Sorry about the mess, but I'm sort of doing it in the lounge room at the moment. Alright, so I've just installed the big end bearings, as you can see. Cylinders all been honed. I cracked number 3 cylinder on the last block, so that's why I'm doing the rebuild. So first things first, absolutely crucial that you keep all dirt and grime, foreign objects off your bearing carriers. You don't want anything, not even a hair in that. It could cause all sorts of dramas. So just make sure that's all clean. Here I've installed all the bearing caps in the bearings in the caps. So all the bearings are in the caps, ready to go. Everything's all nice and clean. So all we've got to do now is put some assembly lube on it. I've gone for the Penrite. It's good stuff. Must have. You want to do this on any engine to prevent seize up on when you're starting the engine. So here we go. I'll put some assembly lube on it and get back to you. So I'll just demonstrate how I put the lube on. It's essential you wear gloves, in my opinion. You've got to wear some good mechanics gloves. So you just smear it evenly over your bearings, like so. You also got to be mindful of dust and particles flying about. You don't land it on that grease because obviously it'll hold it. So I'll finish the last two and we'll put the crank in. Alright, so I've smeared all the bearings. Just a generous amount. You don't want a huge amount on there to block up the holes or anything like that, but just like so. So now we're on to the bearing caps and get those done. And I've got the crankshaft here. Right, I've got all the bearing caps all lubed up, all sitting in place. One thing I did forget to mention is your thrust washers here. Now they've got grooves on one side. The grooves go to the outside of the cap. Otherwise it could be catastrophic. Well, will be catastrophic. It'll seize up and oil won't go where it's meant to be, and you have all sorts of issues. Just another thing I would like to point out is with the bearing caps, you don't want to tighten them down while they're still sitting up, like this one here is. Loose, tight. So what I do is I go along with just the end of my hammer, get it in there, tap it down, there we go, snapped in. Another one. Just gently, you don't have to do it hard. So they're all seated now, both sides. And the only other thing I need to say is, if you're doing this, you need to make sure you measure your bolts. If they're not within spec, well then your bearing caps aren't going to torque down correctly. You're going to have movement, and it's just going to stuff your whole engine basically. Right, so next part is just, I like to get these all finger tight. So, bearing in mind, cleanliness is godliness, so make sure you got nothing on your cam lobes or anything like that. Carriers. And I noticed with these, I brought MDC bearings. With these things, it's a good idea to give them a wipe. So there's the gudgeon pin sleeves, bushes. But you can see there they've got like, oh, there we go, powdery stuff on them. You just wipe it, it comes up nice and smooth. But it's a good idea to get that off because the assembly lube and that just don't mix. It goes gritty and you don't want that. Alright, so I'm going to torque these bolts down to spec, and then I've got to put my piston rings on, get all that sorted out, and we'll get back to that. I think that might be another video, how to do the pistons, new rings, etc., and how to install them easily. But for now, I'll just torque these up, get everything looking nice, and once I've torqued it down, I'll give the actual crank a few turns to make sure everything turns nicely and freely, and then we'll start getting all the gaskets in order. The gasket set I got was off UMR Engines Australia. Guy there, Jamie, he's bloody brilliant, very helpful. So this kit, I got valve stem seals, I got pretty much every single gasket. So injector seals, washers, exhaust even. Yeah, very good price too. Comes with all the NPR piston ring set, which are a very good quality. Also one of the highest quality head gaskets sent through with it. So I'm pretty impressed. Alright, well, I'll get back to torquing these bolts and we'll go from there. Meters of torque, and second stage was 90-degree turn. So as you can see there, I marked where the bolt sat after I torqued it first stage, and then went 90 degrees. And that's I believe factory spec. I've got the rear main seal on. Now I've gone and put the balance shafts in, got them all sitting in there. Just got to torque them to spec. Then I will flip the engine over. As you can see, it rotates nice and freely, which is exactly what we want. So we'll flip the engine over. I've got my pistons, which I need to re-ring. So I've cleaned them up, greased all the pins and everything like that, wrist pins. Yeah, so next I'll re-ring these, and then we'll start putting them in the block and torquing the end caps on these and start getting the engine done a bit further. I think that's all I did mention. Oil pump, that'll be one of the next things after I do the pistons, put the oil pump on. Now there's a trick with the oil pump which I will show you, just because the Ranger motors are a pain in the ass. You've got 10 minutes to do an oil change, otherwise they'll lose all oil pressure. You go to start it up and it's going to seize on you. So when rebuilding these engines, there's a couple of little tricks to getting good oil pressure quickly. I'll show you that when it comes to it. Here's the rings that I've got in the kit. As you can see, the packets are numbered. Yeah, obviously oil rings, first compression rings and second compression rings. I just went and put a bit of oil down the cylinder, just to lube it up a bit for sliding the pistons down in there. Another thing I forgot to mention was with the main bolts down here, it's important that you lube up underneath the head of the bolt, plus lubricate the thread. And there's specific torque settings, and I think so we're doing the timing belt on a 3-litre wheat engine. So the way I do it is I always put the idler in first. You got your notch down here for your high pressure pump. You got those marks to line up there. On top dead centre here. And my lines are lined up here, a little bit out, but you get the point. And then you put your tensioner in after you put the belt on. Keep this side tight, there like that, and then sort of obviously loose on this side. You put your tensioner in. You'll see we've still got to adjust it yet. We'll put a hex key in there, adjust it down, put the bolt in, and we're good to go. Then we're just going to set the valve clearances. We'll get to that in a moment, and getting close, very close. This is looking nice. I've been a bit slack on the videos, but anyway, we'll get to it and get her all back together looking pretty.